In our fast-paced world of constantly changing fads, from TikTok challenges to seasonal must-have items, there's a group of people who just don't seem to get caught up in it all. These individuals don't follow trends. You won't find them buying the popular water bottles all over social media. They aren't interested in the latest styles, and they don't feel any pressure to use new slang words as they pop up. To an outside observer, they might seem old-fashioned, stubborn, or even a bit snobby. But when we look at the psychology behind why someone resists trends, it's rarely just about being rebellious. Actually, it's a mix of personality, how they think, and a deep sense of who they are, where inner peace matters more than what others think. What makes them tick? An internal compass. A core idea in understanding trend resistance is the concept of a locus of control. This just means how much people feel they, not outside forces, are in charge of their life's events. Most people are somewhere between believing external forces or internal forces call the shots. Those who chase trends often lean towards an external locus. They look to their surroundings, friends, and media to tell them what's cool or right. Their feeling of belonging and self-worth is often tied to how well they fit in with the world around them. People who never join trends usually have a strong internal locus of control. Their feeling of being right or content comes from inside themselves. If they like a certain clothing style or way of doing things, they will stick with it for a long time, no matter if it's currently considered stylish by everyone else. Because their self-esteem isn't linked to social likes or approval from friends, the rush that others get from being on trend simply doesn't happen for them. They are guided by what they've always liked, not by the changing currents of culture. For them, a trend is an outside distraction from an inner truth. The science of going your own way. Psychologist Solomon Asch famously showed how powerful social pressure can be in his conformity experiments. He found that many people would agree with a clearly wrong majority just to avoid the awkwardness of standing out or being the only opposing voice. Yet, a small number of participants consistently remained independent, trusting what they saw over what the group thought. Trend-resistant people fit into this independent group. They can handle a lot of the social friction that comes with being different. On a brain level, many people feel real social pain, handled by the same part of the brain as physical pain, when they are out of step with a group. This is an old survival instinct from when being kicked out of the group meant certain death. The trend-resistant person, though, often has a brain wired to care more about accuracy, logic, and what works for them personally, rather than how well they get along socially. For these people, the cost of buying into a trend they don't actually like is much higher than the cost of being the only one not taking part. They see conforming as losing their ability to choose for themselves, which is much more painful than social isolation. Wanting to be unique. In consumer behavior studies, there's a measurable trait called the need for uniqueness, NFU. While many use trends to show they belong to a certain group, others steer clear of them to keep a clear line between themselves and everyone else. For these individuals, the moment a trend goes mainstream is the moment it loses its value. This behavior comes from identity signaling ***. If someone's identity is built on being a careful music listener or a practical outdoors person, the second a certain band or brand becomes a popular trend, it no longer communicates those specific niche values. For the trend-resistant, once everyone has it, the item no longer means anything. They value authenticity, the idea that an item or behavior should show a true personal preference rather than a temporary social craze. This isn't necessarily about being hip or trying to be cool by being different. It's about protecting their self-expression from becoming diluted by widespread popularity. Thinking things through versus going with your gut. Experts often talk about two ways of thinking. System 1, quick, intuitive, emotional, and System 2, slow, analytical, logical. Trends thrive on System 1. They are driven by emotion, what we see, and the herd instinct. When we see a beautiful influencer using a certain product, System 1 creates an instant, uncritical desire for it. It feels right because it looks good on others. People who avoid trends often use System 2 thinking more. When they see a new trend, their first thought is to figure out if it's actually useful. They ask if a new piece of tech really makes them more productive or if a popular clothing item is truly durable. They want to know the why behind the trend. By the time they finish thinking through the pros and cons, the trend has often already come and gone. Their analytical way of thinking acts like a filter, catching fads before they can become part of their daily routine. They appreciate beauty or innovation, but they need a logical reason for change that goes beyond everyone else is doing it. Not falling for social pressure or FOMO. The fear of missing out FOMO is a strong psychological motivator rooted in our past. In ancient societies, being out of the loop could mean being left behind or losing access to resources. This old survival mechanism is what makes modern social media trends so captivating. We feel a biological urge to stay up to date so we aren't left behind socially. Those who ignore trends seem to have an innate FOMO blocker. They are often more comfortable with JOMO, the joy of missing out. This is often connected to higher self-awareness and emotional intelligence. When you clearly understand your own energy, interests, and money goals, the noise of what everyone else is doing feels less like an invitation and more like a distraction. They don't feel they are missing anything because they never valued the social cachet of the new in the first place. How personality plays a part. From a personality standpoint, resisting trends often aligns with specific traits in the Big Five model: openness, conscientiousness, extroversion, agreeableness, and neuroticism. Specifically, these individuals often score lower on agreeableness, not because they are unkind, but because they care less about social harmony and pleasing others at the expense of their own wants. They also often score low on neuroticism. People with high neuroticism are more likely to chase trends as a way to ease social anxiety or the fear of being judged. In contrast, the trend-resistant person is usually more comfortable with where they stand in the world and doesn't look for consumer goods to hide their insecurities. High conscientiousness also plays a part. A conscientious person might see trends as a waste of time and money, a silly detour from their long-term goals, and a break from their personal efficiency. The quiet strength of being yourself. In a digital economy that thrives on creating newness and urgency, the person who never joins trends is quite unusual. They represent a kind of mental independence that's becoming quite rare. By choosing not to take part in the cycle of planned obsolescence for their identity and possessions, they often report less anxiety and greater financial stability. Ultimately, the psychology of the trend-resistant shows how powerful a steady identity can be. They remind us that while blending in can feel safe and exciting, the road less taken offers something more lasting, a life that is truly, genuinely their own. They aren't trying to be anti-trend. They are simply busy being themselves, which is perhaps the most unique and challenging quality to keep in today's world. They prove that the most enduring style is one built on personal values rather than public opinion.